Hey, welcome to another episode of Have Shirts Will Travel with Wendell. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about a classic movie I love. We're going to explore martinis. Going to talk about a classic Aloha shirt. And yeah, we'll just have some fun here. But I've been reading up quite a bit about types of glassware for martinis. Of course, martini is a classic drink. And there's a history behind that. So basically, there's three styles of glasses that are popular for martinis. We've got the sort of the classic V, we've got the coupe style, and we've got something called the Nick and Nora. And this kind of gets me started with what this all brought on. I was watching The Thin Man with Myrna Loy and William Powell, and love that movie. Just one of the most fun movies ever. If you haven't seen it, as you've heard me say before, you're missing out. You got to see this movie. So it spawned a whole bunch of sequels. A couple of them were good, some not so much as others. I always say that's the thing with sequels. Once you found that magic spot, it's kind of hard to duplicate it without looking like you're duplicating it. But the very first movie was called The Thin Man. It was based on a novel by Dashiell Hammett called The Thin Man. Also a favorite book of mine. And if you read it, you really appreciate it. It's almost more like a sort of a sitting room comedy murder. And so Nick and Nora are this wealthy couple. Actually, Nick was once a very famous private detective. He married Nora mostly for her money, and doesn't really work much. So she usually tries to give him something to do and encourage him to go back and play private investigator. And so these mysteries will fall in their lap. And actually the original novel was just a standalone novel. There were never sequels. They did a decent job of translating it to the big screen, and it was so popular that it inspired a number of sequels. So again, by all means, please look up The Thin Man. Myrna Loy will just steal your heart. She's hilarious, she's gorgeous, and William Powell is kind of like every guy's dream come true. He's kind of a cool private investigator, but he really just prefers to drink a lot. He doesn't really like to work because he doesn't have to. And haven't we all been there before? So he's landed this perfect gig, rich wife, gorgeous wife, living the high life, and this mystery happens. And this always spoke to me. Myself and Mrs. Wendell, we're sort of a Nick and Nora, except without any of the money or any of the cool stuff. But we enjoy our cocktail parties. We enjoy our cocktails. We like to have fun. And so I was watching that and I was thinking about it, and I was looking at the glasses they were using, and they had these really cool glasses. I refer to them as coupes, but technically it's a slightly different shape. And modern terminology now, glasses are being sold called Nick and Noras, and it's a variation on the coupe. So we'll start with a little history. We're going to talk about each glass. We're going to make a martini in each glass. We're going to test it, see what we get as far as flavors, bouquet, things like that. But first, let me tell you a little about this shirt. This classic from Ren Spooner. Now, Hawaiian shirts, or Aloha shirts as I like to call them, are famous for a number of classic patterns that have been used since the 30s when they started first manufacturing these shirts overseas in Hawaii. And one of the popular patterns were maps of the islands. Sometimes you'll see them referred to as Land of Aloha. They will literally say it's somewhere on there, Land of Aloha. But this one is a great shirt. It depicts the maps of the islands. So really like this one a lot, but to top it off, not only is it a great pattern, it's a great retro pattern. The shirt's I'm guessing this shirt probably dates back to the late 90s. What I like to think of as Ren Spooner's heyday. They've been around forever, classic shirt manufacturing company. They specialize in reverse print shirts and do a lot of different stuff. But back in the 90s, when I first started coming across them and was purchasing a number of their shirts, they were using rayon. And instead of the reverse print, you could get these great, bold, classic and retro prints that they were doing. So I do wish that Ren Spooner would go back to those days again. The fabrics they used were great. Have some not only rayon, but also Egyptian cotton. So if you're over on eBay or vintage shopping, any of the different websites to do that, or you're running through the thrift stores, if you can find an old Wren schooner with a classic bold print made from rayon, you need to grab that up. These are just fantastic shirts. The quality is there. We've got that great matched pocket. Like the fact that it ties in with this map of the island, blends right in. Wooden buttons. Okay. Again, rayon, great fit, great pattern. I have Chris run some pictures of the shirt up close so you can get a better look at some of the stuff that's got going on. Again, this was a popular theme with aloha shirts. It really starts in the 30s and 40s. Maps of the island. Travel had become a thing. People had discovered the islands and were traveling there. So you'll see a lot of old patterns that are often redone, and they're like travel shirts. You'll see clipper planes and people getting off, things like that. So this particular one I thought was special. It's not necessarily unique, but it's sort of unique. A lot of the ones that I have found in the past with the maps and depiction of the island, it's more of a full pattern that wraps around. This has got a nice border to it. Really like the sleeve, the border seams, all of that. So working with this shirt today, classic shirt, and it's got this sort of white to beige sort of color on it. And you got to think about wearing a shirt like this when you're having your cocktails. The last thing you want to do is be drinking some sort of a blue martini, or a blue cocktail, tiki drinks, things like that, something with a lot of color. Bloody Mary would be a poor choice, because ultimately you're probably going to end up spilling some of it on your shirt. So it's a great shirt for clear liquids, which brings us back around to martinis, a favorite drink of mine. So we're going to make some martinis. We're going to work with these glasses. If I happen to spill some on the shirt, I'm not even going to worry about it. It'll come out at the dry cleaners. So to get started, we've got the coupe. Love the coupes. Dates back to Louis XVI. The legend has it, and I'm told this is not true, somebody made this up, but it's a great story. The shape was actually based on Marie Antoinette's breast. I don't know who makes this stuff up, but it's pretty hilarious. So these were quite well used, because back then they were used for champagne, wines, things like that. They would have a lot of sediment in it. So it was a wide mouth, fairly shallow. And the idea was you didn't sit around and sip this thing. You kind of knocked it back quick before the sediment could line up. And then after you knocked it back, the sediment would settle down to the bottom. It becomes a popular glass. It goes in and out throughout the centuries, but its popularity is still here. And how I got mine, this particular set that I have, I've got some here behind me. I had someone staying at the Tennessee house for a little while. And his name was Chris. Now, this was not California Chris. You've heard about him. This is not Cleveland Chris. He's the guy that's, makes all the funny jokes here and makes me more interesting. This was another guy, so we'll call him Tennessee Chris. But he needed a place to stay. I wasn't here at the time, so he stayed for about 3 months. And we had a mutual friend. And so he stayed, watched the house for me. And when he left, he wanted to do something to say thanks. He spoke with Paige. And he wanted to, find some sort of a bottle of alcohol that I would really like. And Paige warned him that, Wendell's pretty particular about his liquor. So don't just go out and buy something. But if you really want to set him up, he's been interested in coupes. So Tennessee Chris, as a parting gift, left me this set of coupes. And I've been very grateful, and it's become one of my regular go-tos ever since. So one of the oldest versions of the cocktail glass, the coupe. Somewhere in the 20s, the era of Art Deco, and a nice lead into the 40s and 50s, the Atomic Age era, the V-neck glass appears. And these are pretty traditionally referred to as martini glasses, and these have never really gone out of style. More often than not, when you're out somewhere, if you order a martini, it'll probably come in a glass like this. If you order your martini and it doesn't come in a glass like this, for God's sake, let's make sure that they've brought it in a coupe. But a martini needs to be served in some sort of stemmed glass with an interesting shape to it. The difference between this and the coupe, these have a tendency to run larger in volume. So if you want to make a big, hefty drink that you can carry around for the rest of the night, okay, this is the way to go. This one is an 8 ounce. I got this in Mississippi. I was actually there during the pandemic and found myself in the Delta working on a job, and there wasn't much open. And so I had to set up a little bar in my hotel room. I was going to be there for a number of months and everything was closed down. But I found this one restaurant that had these, and they sold me one so I could bring it back to my room and have a martini glass. And that was how I got through the pandemic in the Mississippi Delta. So I've had this one ever since. And like I said, I've got quite a few collection of these, a lot of different shapes and sizes. They get bigger and bigger. And what I find with these, as opposed to the coupe is much more manageable. It's true that it does allow you to knock it back a little faster if you're so inclined, but it's also sort of a manageable shape. So your liquid doesn't slosh as much. These have a tendency to slosh very easily. So depending on how many martinis you plan on having in the night, you got to think about the stability factor. Okay? As you're talking, as you're doing your thing, you're walking around, or you're slumped over a bar, who knows what your story is. But anyways, these have a tendency to slosh and spill much more easy. Now, I also like this one because it's just it's got a thicker stem, a little more hefty. I've had quite a few that were really delicate, really fine glass, very thin. They crack, they chip, they break pretty easily. So as many martini glasses as I have in my collection, I've probably broken and lost twice as many. So I'm really grateful for this one. It's a good workhorse martini glass. Last but not least, the Nick and Nora. That's a more recent name for it, but if you go back again and watch this movie, you'll see Nick and his wife knocking back quite a few martinis, and they use a glass that's shaped more like this. Now, what makes this similar but different to the coupe is it's got this bell shape, but it kind of tightens up at the top. This one also holds about 5 ounces, the same as this. So two different shapes, about the same amount of alcohol. Also, I like a smaller, like a 5-ounce martini, I find is much more friendly. If I'm going to have another one, that's fine. But having one at a time in smaller quantities, because the one thing is you want your martini to be really cold. A lukewarm, room temperature martini starts losing the magic fast. Now, an interesting thing about the shape of this Nick and Nora, it's got that belled shape and it tightens back in. It actually holds the cold in longer. The cold doesn't escape as quickly from the glass as opposed to these two wide mouth versions. So, assuming that we're not going to have this around long enough to get warm, we're going to make up the martinis. I'm going to try one in each. I'm going to see if there's any different changes in the flavor profile. So we're going to start with we're going to start with one of my favorite go-to gins. Now, I do have a bit of a conundrum because I'm making a pretty hefty one here, and I'm not sure I have a pitcher big enough. But we're going to start by, we're going to adapt. So, one of my favorite large clear ice cubes. Okay, these are the ones I talk about all the time. They melt very slowly. They are great for chilling your drink without watering it. So we're going to start with one of those ice cubes. Now, my preferred combination for a martini is I like to have about 3 ounces of gin and a ½ ounce of vermouth. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 1 ounce, depends on how it's going, but a ½ ounce to 1 ounce. So I think today, just for the heck of it, we got this measurement on here. Yeah, we'll go with 3/4 ounce of vermouth. So for each drink, let's see, I'm not going to need that. For each drink, we're going to have 3 ounces of gin, 3/4 of an ounce of vermouth. So we will start. So 3 times 3 is 9, and this is a 2 ounce measurement. So let's put this thing together here. So I'm going to move these out of the way so we don't get into any silly accidents. Okay. 2. 4. 6. 8. It's gonna be a fun night. So again, that's 9 ounces of gin, but that's also for 3 drinks. 3 ounces of gin for each drink. Okay, using Dolan Vermouth. Big fan of this. You'll also hear debates over, should a martini be dry? What's the difference between a dry martini and a wet martini? The debates online are hilarious because I've literally seen people describe a dry martini. Someone else describes the same thing as a wet martini. So whatever that nonsense is about. A lot of people say you don't really want, all you do is you rinse the glass a little bit, then throw it out. Okay, well then you're not drinking a martini. I hate to inform you, but you're now drinking gin. And by the way, if you're not a gin drinker, again, vodka, the logical substitute. I think we all are familiar with my feelings on vodka, but hey, whatever gets you through the night. So what I'm going to do, put 3/4 in this. I'm going to put 3/4 in this. I'm going to put 3/4 in this. And as custom dictates, we're going to rinse the glass. Now, you're saying, is he just going to throw it away? Of course not. So we're going to rinse the martini glass. Standard practice. You always should be rinsing your martini glass. We rinse it with vermouth. And then we just add it right back into the mixture like so. Nice little rinse. Twirl the glass as we rinse. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want this cold. Somewhere along the line I developed this idea, you should count to 19 spins. I don't know where I get this stuff, I really don't, but I've already lost count. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to keep stirring this thing until it starts frosting up the outside of my glass. And if you've heard me talk about this before, a lot of people use a cocktail shaker. Big mistake. Don't do that. Stir your martinis, okay? Shaking the martini, you're crushing it up with that ice. You're actually watering down your drink because you're shattering the ice. It starts melting a lot faster, but you also bruise the gin. You sort of overwhelming the flavors. This allows the gin to open up, mixes well with that vermouth, give a nice, clean, crisp drink. All right, so I don't have a thermometer. I wouldn't know what temperature to look for anyways, but I'm pretty comfortable that we've got it nice and chilled. So now we're going to do this. Like I said, these are roughly 5-ounce glasses. This one, an 8-ounce glass. And then what I like to do, this is not mandatory, but I think it helps, is a little bit of orange bitters, just a dash. And then depending on the time of the year, what would really be appropriate, I think right now, is some lemon peel, a lemon peel garnish that we could add to this. However, today, I'm kind of feeling in the mood for an olive. So traditionally, purists will tell you that an olive is only used for a garnish if you're making a dirty martini. And I'm not going to say they're wrong. I'm going to say it's my world and they just live in it. So we're going to have a couple olives. Yeah, it's also great, like if you just kind of want a snack. So but there is something about that glass with the olive. There's something simple, it's understated, just a nice look. So we've got this, we We've got this. And we've got the Nick and Nora. Now, I would say that from a visual standpoint, the Nick and Nora is probably the least attractive of the bunch. But there is this theory it's going to keep this drink a little colder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this coupe. Perfect. This is absolutely perfect. That's a great glass if you just want to knock something back. Martinis are always great for sipping, but the fact that you can do that without wearing it on yourself, it's attractive, it's manageable. I like that. Now, we're going to go with this, probably the most classic of the look. And I have to say, of the three, probably my most favorite presentation. But again, it's already sloshing around. I can imagine if I was walking around and this wasn't my first martini, we could have a mess on our hands. I'd be wearing half of them, I'm sure. The shape of the glass does nothing to change the flavor profile. Identical drinks. So now it's about aesthetics. I'm really liking the coupe's aesthetics because that's been a mood that I've been in the last couple of years, but have always been a fan of this. It's a classic look. Yeah, taste is great. Okay. All right. Now, like I said, this Nick and Nora is probably my least favorite as far as the look, but you have to watch the Thin Man. When you see William Powell demonstrating to the bartenders how to make different drinks based on the foxtrot versus the waltz and how he shakes his drink, and then he pours them in these glasses, and then Nora comes in and says, how many have you had? And he says, I think he says, he's like, this is my fifth one. And she immediately orders five because she wants to catch up. And they're drinking out of these cool little glasses. So, well, it's nice and cold. And actually, it's got just a little bit more, starting to sweat a little bit as opposed to these two. So this idea of keeping it cold longer, it probably works. And actually, interestingly enough, maybe because it focuses this on your palate a little more, I actually think that this one tastes slightly better. It's definitely cold, but I think the bouquet, the shape of the glass helps force the bouquet in a pleasant way, and so I'm getting more of that on my nose. Lines it up well for the back. It's clean, it's crisp. Okay, well, yeah, this is the winner. So probably in my day-to-day drinking, I'll probably go ahead and stick with the coupes as much as possible, but I have to tell you, the Nick and Nora, you definitely, for me anyways, I got just a little more taste out of it. And again, I think it's because of the shape of the glass. This one will always be my favorite shape, but it is an unmanageable shape. And again, these are always much larger. So I like to start with a smaller one. So yes, definitely a matter of preference. But I have to say, I will probably stick with coupes. I'm not going to turn any of these down. And if I come across a gin that I haven't tried before, really wanted to see what the effect is, I might use the Nick and Nora just to do that. Or if I'm watching the Thin Man, then I will definitely get the Nick and Nora glass out and keep them coming. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's been another episode of Half Shirts Will Travel. And come, if you like what we're doing here, please like and subscribe. And until next time, cheers. If you want more of my thoughts and insights on aloha shirts, cocktails, gear, tools, or anything else I may think of, please like and subscribe. See you in the next episode of Have Shirts, Will Travel.